At 88, Jack Nicholson no longer carries other people's behavior in silence. For most of his career, he avoided conflict and let the public believe the rooms he worked in were as smooth as the performances. Now he speaks with the clarity that comes when there is nothing left to protect. He admits that fame did not shield him from colleagues who tested his patience, undermined his trust, or revealed the cost of surviving in Hollywood. These stories form a pattern he can no longer ignore. This countdown reveals the 7 actors who left the deepest mark. The final name will surprise you. Number 7, Ray Winstone, the cold shoulder. To the public, Ray Winstone is the grounded force of British cinema, a presence that steadies a room the moment he walks in. To Jack Nicholson, he became something else. On the set of The Departed, Winstone found a man whose legend did not match the working partner he expected. Winstone was born in 1957 in London and rose from amateur boxing to respected character work. He entered Scorsese's film prepared for discipline and mutual respect. What he felt instead was distance. The attitude came early, a way of standing apart, a quiet signal that status set the rules. The scene he remembers is simple. He and his wife were together when Nicholson offered a greeting that carried no warmth. Winstone later described it plainly. The behavior was rude toward both of them. He repeated it to make the memory exact. Nicholson was rude to him. Nicholson was rude to his wife. Then came the quote that shaped the moment. If Nicholson had been younger, things might have gone another way. It was said with a smile that did not hide the truth beneath it. The quote became the pivot. It marked the instant Winstone stopped offering benefit of the doubt. It also revealed the standard he expected from peers, regardless of fame. He did not question Nicholson's talent. He said the work was great. He questioned the treatment. That distinction mattered. It grounded the clash rather than turning it petty. 2 actors met with different expectations. One carried authority, the other expected civility. The consequence was quiet. Winstone stepped back. No feud, no desire to revisit the moment. He simply marked the distance and left it there. An on-set cold shoulder can sting. The next story shows what happens when an entire production begins to tilt under the weight of one actor's behavior. Number 6, John Belushi, the unsteady talent. To the public, John Belushi was a storm of energy, a performer who turned chaos into comedy. To Jack Nicholson, he became a test of patience that stretched far beyond what a set can hold together. Belushi was born in 1949 in Chicago and rose fast through Second City and Saturday Night Live. Nicholson brought him into going south with real belief. He offered direction, space, and the kind of support that signals trust in someone's potential. The tension formed early. Nicholson saw the long nights, the late arrivals, and the sudden shifts in Belushi's focus. One scene became the marker. Nicholson called for a reset during a simple exchange. Belushi froze, stared at him, and shifted the mood of the room in seconds. Crew members later said the silence felt heavier than any argument. Belushi carried the moment with him. His quote came near the end of filming. He told friends, "Jack treated me like shit on Going South. I hate him." It was the line that exposed the split between them. Belushi wanted protection from his own volatility. Nicholson wanted discipline for the sake of the work. Nicholson adjusted his approach. He reduced Belushi's screen time to steady the pace of production. He kept the decision quiet, but it changed the dynamic completely. Belushi took it as a personal wound. Nicholson saw it as the only way to keep the film on track. The consequence was distance. They finished the project without open conflict, but neither man reached for the other again. No partnership grew from the chance Nicholson had offered. Up next is a story where the injury was not about control on set, but about dignity in a room where status was impossible to ignore. Number 5, David Spade, the humiliated partner. To the public, David Spade is the quick wit who turns awkward moments into comedy. To Jack Nicholson, he became the quiet witness to a display of status that left a mark. Their conflict did not grow from a set or a script. It came from a room where hierarchy spoke louder than anyone in it. Spade was born in 1964 in Michigan and rose through stand-up before joining Saturday Night Live. By the late 90s, he was seeing Lara Flynn boil and entered the circles Nicholson moved in with respect for the gap between their careers. The moment Spade remembers is exact. Nicholson walked toward Boyle, looked at her, and asked her out while Spade stood beside her. No raised voices, no scene, just a direct question carrying the weight of reputation. Spade later repeated the quote that defined his reaction. "I did not stick up for her." Then he explained why. "You are either gonna go out with him or you are not. That recognition was the injury. It was not about losing a date. It was about losing face in front of people who understood the meaning instantly. He carried it long after the relationship ended. He later told the story with jokes, but the irritation stayed. The consequence was distance. Spade never turned it into a feud, but he never forgot it. Some encounters stay because they reveal how power rearranges a room in seconds. Now hear about a young actress who declined pressure with a single line and watched the path ahead of her shift in silence. If you want to follow more videos like this, you can subscribe here. Number 4, Geena Davis, the quiet refusal. To the public, Geena Davis is the poised talent who rose with speed through comedy and drama. To Jack Nicholson, she became the young actress who did not follow the unspoken rules of their circles. Their connection began in soft-lit rooms where agents and older stars already knew how the game worked. Davis was born in 1956 in Massachusetts and moved from modeling to acting before earning early roles that placed her near established names. Nicholson noticed her during these gatherings. After a few dinners, he began calling. The calls were brief at first, then shifted. One message carried the question she later repeated clearly. He said, "Hey Geena, so when is it gonna happen?" The wording left no doubt about what he wanted. The scene that defined their interaction took place on a later call. Davis answered with a line Dustin Hoffman had given her while she worked on Tootsie. A line meant to deflect and advance without confrontation. She used it calmly. The joke acted as a shield. It was a refusal delivered so politely that it closed the door without raising tension. The quote became the pivot that set the tone for everything that followed. People close to Nicholson later said he was surprised, then quietly respectful of how she handled it. Yet the shift in their professional path came quickly. In Hollywood, career intersections are shaped by comfort, alliances, and the ease of collaboration. After that exchange, the chance of working together faded. No argument, no confrontation, only a silence that served as the consequence. Davis spoke of the moment without bitterness. She understood how the industry worked and how decisions could turn on a single conversation. What lingered was the knowledge that declining pressure, even gently, can redraw the map of opportunity. Davis shut down pressure with a joke. The next story shows how a single phone call cut far deeper when age and worth were judged in the same breath. Number 3, Cher, the age judgment. To the public, Cher is the voice that survived every shift in music and film. To Jack Nicholson, she became the actress caught in a moment where age and worth were judged at once. Their conflict began quietly with a phone call that struck harder than any argument. Cher was born in 1946 in California and had rebuilt her career more than once. By 1986, she had an Academy Award nomination and a Cannes win. The day after she turned 40, director George Miller told her she was not wanted for The Witches of Eastwick and said Nicholson agreed. The reason was blunt. She was too old. She was not seen as sexy enough for Alexandra Medford. Cher later said the words brought tears. It was not simple rejection. It was a judgment on her age and her place in an industry that narrows the space for women. The phrase "too old" became the quote that shaped the moment. Nicholson's name made the sting sharper. Cher pushed back. She listed her work and kept the door open. She won the role, but the bruise stayed. What stayed with her was how Nicholson's agreement was used to close the conversation. Even without direct words, his influence formed part of the wound. On set, he was steady and supportive. No trace of the earlier dismissal appeared. The contradiction lingered. Later, she spoke of him warmly and mentioned small gifts he sent, including a hand-painted bull for their shared zodiac sign. Cher's bruise softened. The next story follows two actors whose methods collided and tightened the room around them. Number 2, Meryl Streep, the unyielding partner. To the public, Meryl Streep is the master of precision, an actor who shapes scenes with intent and discipline. To Jack Nicholson, she became a difficult match at a moment when the material needed balance. Their work on Heartburn should have been seamless. Instead, it tightened the room around them. Streep was born in 1949 in New Jersey and had built a reputation for exact preparation. Nicholson entered with a style shaped by instinct and improvisation. Heartburn, a story about fracture and betrayal, demanded trust between leads. That trust strained before cameras rolled. The scene that defined their tension was quiet but clear. During a kitchen sequence, Streep asked for another take to land a specific beat. Nicholson answered with an improvised shift in tone that caught her off guard. Crew members said the air changed instantly. Streep stepped back, looked at the monitor, and told an assistant she would never work with him again. The quote traveled fast. It became the pivot that revealed how deep the friction ran. Their approaches collided. Nicholson carried a loose, dominant energy. Streep worked for structure and clarity. On a film built around emotional rupture, those methods created sharp words and long silences. Director Mike Nichols watched closely. Sometimes he intervened. Sometimes he let the tension settle. The consequence was visible. Scenes that should have flowed appeared forced. Crew members adapted to two leads moving in opposite directions. What began as professional difference grew into a pattern everyone noticed. A year later, they reunited for Ironweed. Biographers later reported an alleged backstage closeness that shifted how people read their earlier conflict. What seemed like pure professional friction gained another layer that blurred the line between performance and personal history. Now we move from professional tension to a private dispute that stretched across decades and entered the courts. Number 1. Susan Anspach, The Unsettled Past. To the public, Susan Anspach was the sharp and independent actress who emerged from the new Hollywood era with conviction. To Jack Nicholson, she became the unresolved figure whose presence lingered across decades in silence, documents, and disputed memories. Their history never read like a romance. It read like a fracture that never closed. Anspach was born in 1942 in New York and built her career on stage before moving into films with emotional weight. She met Nicholson around the time of Five Easy Pieces. In 1970, she said he was the father of her son. Nicholson never confirmed it. The tension stayed quiet until 1990. 4. When a profile asked him to list his children, he named only one. The omission landed hard. Anspach wrote to the magazine, calling it an oversight and insisting her son was his oldest. The shift that followed centered on a scene that defined their conflict. Nicholson's business manager demanded repayment of more than $600,000 in loans that Anspach said she used for their son, including the upkeep of a home. The threat of foreclosure turned the matter into something sharper than a private dispute. She described it as psychological pressure, not finance. The quote that revealed Nicholson's position came later in deposition. He called himself a humanitarian and said the dispute left him with only mild antipathy toward Anspach. The controlled phrasing framed the battle as a failed transaction rather than a question of responsibility or care. It became the pivot showing how differently they understood their past. The consequences were severe. Anspach went bankrupt and sued for $1 million. She continued to insist Nicholson was the father and that the rupture altered her life. Nicholson maintained his position. The distance never closed. Some stories do not end with resolution. They settle as two versions that cannot meet, shaped by memory, loss, and the cost of what was left unacknowledged.